Well, just before I speak, I want to just pay tribute to a group of people who are very much an unseen presence in the society because they're very unassuming, but their work over the years, I think, has enabled us to do many of the most important things that SPUC does. They are constantly on the telephone. They're led by a wonderful lady called Carol. And Carol, I'd like you to come up and receive, on behalf of your group, and thank you personally for your wonderful leadership over the years. Carol works at our Preston office, and the new person in charge of the Preston office is Isaac, and he told me that their working conditions are really appalling, and we've got to do something about it. And really, all I can say is that I think that in their quiet way, Carol, you have changed history, and your team in Preston. Thank you. Last month, the Daily Telegraph and many other UK news publications reported that the Care Quality Commission had found serious shortcomings in some Mary Stopes International abortion clinics, and that the Department of Health had suspended, therefore, certain abortion procedures carried out by them. The first paragraph of the Telegraph report on the 19th of August stated, Mary Stopes clinics have suspended surgical abortions using anaesthetic or sedation for underage girls and vulnerable women following an unannounced inspection by Care Quality Commission inspectors who found patients could be at risk. The second paragraph of the Telegraph report stated, the Care Quality Commission said that the 250 women a week who were booked in for terminations would be sent elsewhere to make sure they were protected from potential harm. As Paul Tully, SPUC's parliamentary director, told the Society's Executive Committee last weekend, the NHS was anxious to ensure that no abortions were missed and apparently enlisted the help of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service to make sure that every baby was killed. In other words, the NHS and the British government wanted abortion business as usual. Stopping the business of abortion and stopping abortion completely in the UK is the purpose of the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. And I propose that this weekend we recommit ourselves unequivocally to that top priority. It's time for SPUC to go on the front foot in our campaigns and to make the idea of completely stopping abortion in the UK completely normal. 50 years on since the launch of the Society, the first pro-life organisation to be established anywhere in the world. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Elspeth. Our pro-abortion opponents are very much part of the British establishment. The establishment, those dominating groups which hold power in our country, the judges, the government of the day, including Parliament, the media, academia, the health professions, and the educational elite. They appear overwhelmingly to be in favour of disregarding the right to life of unborn children, at the very least, in certain circumstances. However, as we have discovered in Britain, and in SPUC's experience at the United Nations and in countries throughout the world, campaigning experience which is second to none. The logical outcome of legalising abortion in certain circumstances is that abortion becomes available in any circumstances. As Dr. Anthony McCarthy, SPUC's Education Director, put it to us in his short and profound conference welcome address on Friday evening, the only things which really protect society's weakest, most vulnerable human beings are moral absolutes. Once Parliament says it's okay to kill an innocent child in the womb, the defence against killing any unborn child is torn away. Imagine if a law were passed permitting a racial group to be stripped of citizenship and human rights. It would mean in practice that everybody's human rights would be threatened, because unequivocal respect for the dignity of human life was being removed from the statute book. There is only one logical position for a responsible pro-life group to adopt if it seeks to oppose abortion either in any circumstances or in certain circumstances, and that's to oppose abortion in all circumstances. Again, as Dr. Anthony McCarthy explained, nothing else works for the weakest members of the society, like Rebecca Kisling, for instance, conceived in rape. So, how does SPUC go about doing this? Well, what SPUC must do is to reflect on our work over the past half-century, and in particular, we must reflect on our very rare but very real pro-life successes with a view to replicating such pro-life successes with greater and greater frequency in the future. Very rarely, but every now and then, it's as though the terrifying reality of abortion simultaneously becomes startlingly clear to the majority of people living in the UK. And even more rarely, SPUC has been able to take decisive action because of popular revulsion towards killing unborn children. Those of mature years and long memories here at this conference this weekend will recall certain occasions over the past 50 years when the consciences of our fellow citizens have been deeply stirred by a story about abortion. For example, in 1994, some doctors in Britain launched a campaign to be allowed to develop techniques for taking eggs or ovaries from aborted infants to create babies for childless women. Remarkably, for once, public revulsion to such a grotesque practice was widely reported by the media, and the views of the pro-life movement were given prominent publicity. From January 1994 until the middle of summer, the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children led a massive national effort to rally public opinion against the creation of babies from the eggs of aborted infants. Firstly, we launched a petition campaign and gained 500,000 names against the practice. Next, we distributed nearly 1 million leaflets to households across Britain, and we roused churches nationwide. As a result, Parliament was swamped with a protest, unlike anything it had ever seen, according to politicians at that time. Tens of thousands of letters and telephone calls to Parliament sent a message to MPs, and the message was not ignored. On July the 12th, the House of Lords, following a vote in the House of Commons, provided the pro-life movement with an historic victory when it voted 57 to 35 to outlaw the use of eggs from aborted girl unborn children in creating embryos for implantation into infertile women. Now, bear in mind how extraordinary and unexpected a development this was. Only 3 years after Parliament had voted by a massive majority in favour of destructive human embryo experimentation, SPUC found itself in a position to use its decades of campaigning and political experience to rally public opinion, to get a law passed by Parliament to stop in its tracks the cannibalisation of little girls killed in the womb. Against all the odds, as we pointed out at the time, we had won the first legislative victory on the sanctity of human life since abortion was legalised in Britain. Because a pro-life chord had been struck in the hearts of ordinary people, and SPUC seized the moment with the result that for once our pro-life cause was able to win the day. I believe, and I think we know from experience, that in their heart of hearts, the British people are revolted by abortion, by the killing of helpless, tiny children in their mother's wombs. What we did in 1994 can be done again with our unwavering faith in the justice of our cause, using our tried and tested tactic of building a peaceful army of door-to-door and church-door educational activists throughout the country, on the basis of solid research and crystal clear briefings for supporters and politicians, and launching swift, timely, well-judged political action when a good opportunity presents itself. Using such an approach, in 2008, SPUC defeated attempts by the pro-abortion lobby effectively to decriminalise abortion completely when or virtually completely, when our opponents were poised to remove virtually all remaining protection for unborn children during the passage of the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act, the second one. Seizing the moment and using such an approach in 2010, SPUC successfully halted attempts to make sex education compulsory. But, as Antonia Tully has explained this weekend, we are deeply concerned that renewed attempts will be made in the very near future. And SPUC in 2015, using the same approach, seizing the moment, in concert with other pro-life groups and church leaders, inflicted a massive defeat on the euthanasia lobby in the House of Commons. MPs voted by 330 to 118 to reject Rob Maris's bill to enlist doctors to assist suicide for certain people. The vote of 330 being an absolute majority of MPs. So, what SPUC did in 1994, in 2008, 2010, 2015 in Britain, we also did, by the way, in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, including in recent years under the leadership of SPUC's officers in Ireland, Pat Buckley in Dublin and Liam Gibson in Belfast. Some of the pro-life movements and SPUC's greatest historical achievements have been in Ireland, namely constitutional protection for unborn children in the Republic of Ireland in 1982, where Phyllis Bowman, my predecessor, played such an important role, and in Northern Ireland, where there has been 50 years of successful resistance to pro-abortion legislation in a part of the world which is constitutionally part of the UK. What a scandal this is for the pro-abortion lobby in the UK, in a nation that promotes legalised abortion throughout the world, a nation which is the home of International Planned Parenthood Federation, which has its headquarters in London. How scandalous for them that part of the UK has not bowed to the abortion lawmaking juggernaut, and the people of all faiths have resisted it there with the support of SPUC and our fellow pro-life groups. What we've achieved, as I say, through our unwavering faith in the justice of our cause, using our tried and tested tactic of building a peaceful army of door-to-door educational activists throughout the country, on the basis of solid research and crystal clear briefings for supporters and politicians, and launching swift, timely and well-judged political action when the right opportunity arises. At this point, on the Society's 50th anniversary, I want to pay tribute to the pioneering, prophetic and enduring political, educational and grassroots work of Phyllis Bowman, my predecessor as Director of SPUC. Without Phyllis, I would not be involved in the work of the Society, and without her, I think many of us would not be here today. Like our magnificent speakers yesterday, Rebecca Kiesling and Mary Dugan, I believe it's time for SPUC to learn from our 50 years experience and to go on the front foot in our campaigns to outmaneuver our opponents, as we have on a number of occasions in the past, all with a view to making the idea of stopping abortion completely, in Britain, completely normal, because it really is normal not to kill children. Future generations will take that fact for granted and will look at what is happening today with horror and utter disbelief. SPUC must proactively look for ways of replicating our very rare but our very real successful campaigns with greater frequency in the years ahead, building on the natural revulsion of the British people to abortion. We've been speaking already this weekend about Cathy Warwick, the Chief Executive of the Royal College of Midwives, who called for the decriminalisation of abortion, meaning that anyone could perform an abortion at any time up to birth for any reason. Cathy Warwick is also chairman of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, the largest abortion business in the UK. During recent months, SPUC, led by you at the local level, has been raising awareness of this shocking collusion between the Royal College of Midwives and the abortion industry. This terrible situation has provided SPUC with the opportunity of getting the truth out there and exposing the abortion industry's obsessive drive for profits over genuine health care. What we need to do now is to keep pushing out this message about Cathy Warwick and the Royal College of Midwives through organised, localised leafleting groups door to door throughout the country. We need proactively to identify other truly shocking developments with a view to building on ordinary people's natural revulsion to abortion. We don't have to look very far. At SPUC's July Council this year, Paul Tully, the Society's General Secretary, reported that a pregnant woman who had suffered head injuries, allegedly a victim of domestic violence, was subjected to a forced abortion at around 23 weeks by the authority of Mr. Justice Baker in the Court of Protection. On the 22nd of January 2016, Mr. Justice Baker said of the abortion, and I quote, "Because it is conceivable that it will be necessary for restraint to be used in the course of the procedure, I declare that it will be lawful for the NHS Trust to use proportionate force for that purpose." We need to bring the facts of this shocking legal ruling to the attention of the British public through our door-to-door and church-door leafleting campaigns and in other ways. I believe it's possible that this case might switch on a light in the darkened consciences of our fellow citizens, darkened by 570 abortions a day in our country. Forced abortion is a double crime against humanity, and the horror of what happened to that poor mother only serves to underline the horror of abortion, since far fewer people would object to restraint being used on the mother if abortion of itself was viewed as a humane and kindly act. The impact of abortion on women is both a truly compassionate and a truly vital way of getting our message across to the British public. In October 2015, 21-year-old Jade Rees was referred for abortion, and 3 weeks later she hanged herself. God rest her. Jade from Oldham, Greater Manchester, had the abortion after her 5-month relationship with her unborn baby's father broke up. Reports revealed that she had been battling depression since she was 14, and she had a history of eating disorders. Jade took her life whilst listening to a pop song about the suffering of a miscarriage. She left notes addressed to her parents and her 2-year-old son. Many doctors refer women for abortion for mental health grounds without considering the evidence of what abortion does to women, including the evidence that the suicide risk is significantly higher after an abortion. The case of Jade Rees and previous such tragic cases need to be drawn to the attention of the British public through our door-to-door and church-door leafleting campaigns and in other ways. In 98% of abortions in England, doctors cite the risk to mental health as the reason for the abortion referral. I've said that we need to proactively identify truly shocking developments to build on rousing the British people's natural revulsion to killing unborn children. And once again, the ever-vigilant Paul Tully, my professional colleague these past 35 years, comes to the rescue. At recent SPUC and executive and council meetings, Paul has been noting the increasing attention being given in academic literature to the possibility of legalising infanticide. Professor Savulescu of Oxford University and of many other distinguished institutions recently wrote a leading article in the Journal of Medical Ethics, of which he's the editor. And he writes under the headline, "Abortion, Infanticide and Allowing Babies to Die 40 Years On." He says, in January 2012, the Journal of Medical Ethics published online Giubellini and Minerva's paper, After Birth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? After Birth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? In this special of the issue of the journal, Giubellini and Minerva's paper comes to print along with 31 articles from some of the best scholars in the world, from the broadest range of perspectives on abortion and infanticide, including those critical of Giubellini and Minerva. I would like to explain why a Journal of Medical Ethics published an article examining infanticide and now devotes a special issue to the subject. Although there is some reason to, he says, what I'm pointing out is that actions to end the life of newborns are widely practiced and legally sanctioned, although not called infanticide. And it goes on in the way that we've become familiar with the debates and the propaganda and the campaigns used to legalise abortion throughout the world. And Paul, our parliamentary director, is convinced that the academic world here is softening up the British establishment, the judiciary, the government, leading civil servants, the leading politicians and medical bodies and educationalists for the acceptance of so-called after-birth abortion. SPUC, through its door-to-door leafleting network and church-door leafleting, needs to get this message out to the general public, who we hope and pray will be appalled and react strongly to such 21st century barbarism, which will undoubtedly be targeted in the first instance at disabled babies, just as is happening openly and legally now in the Netherlands. When I first became involved at national level in SPUC 42 years ago, I thought that we should be encouraging the 100,000 people who supported the Society's national rallies at that time to use their energy and commitment by going door to door with leaflets which explain the reality of abortion. I still think that's the way forward. Let's all pause for a moment and imagine living in a country where every couple of months, say, thousands of individuals and groups were leafleting hundreds and thousands of houses. Pro-life people often say, we've got to get the message out there. But how do we go about that in reality? We have to have a plan. The media throughout the world overwhelmingly ignore our message because they are controlled by a tiny group of wealthy individuals who support abortion. And even if the media were to accept pro-life advertising, which we know from experience they don't and they won't, the pro-life movement could never afford to pay for it. However, what the media can't do is to stop us from mobilising a peaceful army of pro-life supporters prepared to work in groups and alone, delivering the pro-life message based on SPUC's careful research and decades of experience. We all make mistakes. I believe if we'd started to do this 50 years ago, we'd now be the biggest, most influential movement in the country. However, for the past few years, we have been building this movement, and I urge you, if you're not already involved, to contact Catherine Hampton, the SPUC conference organiser, and join the movement now. Your joining this movement will be a prophetic action and will be a great gift to future generations, who I hope and pray will just take it for granted that this is what you have to do. How else would you get the message to people? It's not expensive, and over time it builds up support, membership for the society. Moving on to other matters, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of the faithful branches of the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. Now, you know, it would be invidious to begin going through a list of branches. I'm just going to mention one because it's not that far from here, Nottingham branch. I was talking to John Edwards of that branch, and he talked about the pro-life chain they have every year, where they have 50 people come. And, you know, that would make an extraordinary, unforgettable impact in the way that pro-life chain is designed, with a single one or two messages we give out. And this is amazing work. It's not easy to do this work. And of course there are so many other branches that are quietly doing that kind of activity as well. There is a time to, at this conference, put that kind of work centre stage, but I think at another conference we really ought to do that. And I just also want to mention the extraordinary work being done by SPUC Scotland. SPUC Scotland is very much part of the society. We're all part of the same council, the same executive, working very, very, and even ever more increasingly together, under the dynamic leadership of John Deegan, their new Chief Executive. And for years, and they've done it beautifully under successive directors, Ian, Murray, Donna Nicholson, and now John Deegan, they have taken the care, if you like, in collaboration with British Victims of Abortion, now Arch, being led beautifully by Claire Bremner and Louise Grant, who are also here this weekend. So it's an incredibly important work funded by SPUC, a compassionate outreach to women who've had abortions principally, but also to mothers-to-be. And we're very honoured this year to be joined by the National President of the Union of Catholic Mothers. And I wonder, Val, I'm terribly sorry, would you mind just standing up and giving us a wave? Thank you. You and the Catholic mums have publicly joined with the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children in a campaign to mark the tragic 50th anniversary of the passing of the Abortion Act. It means a lot to me. My mother was president of Southwark Diocese, and the UCM was a huge support to my own family and to so many families as we were growing up. Val has been joined by Angie Higginson, and you've been most welcome this weekend. Angela had to go to her son, who was reading, I think, at an important event at church, grandson, who was reading at an important event in church this weekend. I do hope you've had time to enjoy your weekend with us. Now, as Antonia Tully put it in the most recent edition of the Pro-Life Times, 2017 will be an important year. Obviously, we're marking the 50 years of virtually unrestricted abortion in Britain. 8 million babies have been killed, thousands of women scarred, and hardly a family left in the land left untouched by the tragedy of abortion. And so, starting this year, SPUC is joining with the UCM in a campaign to make MPs, try to make MPs face up to what's happened in the last 50 years and to take action to stem the tide of killing. MPs, of course, are central to bringing about changes we need to save unborn lives. So in order to build momentum and make an impact, we need to start now in 2016. So we're running a postcard campaign which enables everyone over the age of 18 to challenge their MP to make a pro-life pledge. The pledge calls on MPs, and I quote, to recognise the humanity of unborn children from the time of conception and to work to instate equal legal protection for all. It will be launched in churches on the 22nd to 23rd of October, next month, and you have postcard campaign promoters who get permission from the local priest to distribute the cards. Over the weekend of 29th to the 30th of October, the postcard petition promoters hand out the postcards to churchgoers who fill in the cards with their details, collect in the cards and send them to SPUC. And then SPUC and the UCM, who are working together on that project in the parishes, present the cards to individual MPs from their constituents in what we hope will be a massive show of pro-life strength. And then going forward in 2017, in April, we'll be taking the postcard campaign onto the streets, and in October, calling on MPs, calling on people, pro-lifers throughout England and Wales, and we hope to do this campaign in Scotland too, to visit their MP in their constituency to put forward the case for the unborn child. Val's put a lovely message in the Pro-Life Times, which finishes by saying, in the UCM we're committed to prayer, love, active witness to marriage, family and Christian life in the world. The plight of unborn babies is always close to our hearts. So thank you again, Val, and I'll be writing to all of you here about this campaign in the next few days. I must also say a word about the presence at this conference of so many really powerful pro-life groups, powerful in their witness, who are present at this weekend. I think it's a huge blessing and a sign of the maturity of our movement after 50 years that we find ourselves united this weekend. As Christine said just now, as a team, different groups in the same team. And we're united with such a number of marvellous sister pro-life groups. March for Life, who've been here, with their important witness every year, done on a completely voluntary basis. Good Counsel Network, to whom we turn so frequently when mothers come to us who are suffering during a pregnancy and need help. 40 Days for Life, whose prophetic work is so important. Image, truly prophetic work, particularly in the 1980s when you were in and out of the courts, but that work flourishing now, spreading all around the country in a different way. Lovewise, as you heard, those of you who attended the workshop with Antonia, with our outreach in schools. I also want to say a word about SPUC's international work, particularly our work at the United Nations. Over the years, SPUC has worked in many nations: Ireland, the Philippines, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Kenya, and increasingly we've worked with strongly pro-life Catholic leaders in Africa through the leadership and cooperation in particular of Obianuju Ekiocha, the founder of Culture of Life Africa, and our very own Antonia Tully, SPUC's campaigns and fundraising director. Above all, though, SPUC has worked at the United Nations, principally through the tireless efforts of Peter Smith, supported by Frances, his wife, and Pat Buckley, who, as we all know, celebrated 50 years of marriage with Philomena. These wonderful ladies support their husbands, who spend many months away from homes and family, fighting for life on our behalf at the UN, and fighting against international agreements designed to promote abortion on demand and universal compulsory sex education, and the suppression or sidelining of parents as the primary educators worldwide. Peter and Pat are widely acknowledged by pro-lifers worldwide as being major leaders in the battle to stop the United Nations from accepting abortion as a human right. And I'm pleased, and I know that Peter and Pat are even more pleased, that they're now under the diligent management of Maria Medisa, SPUC's International Director, and Matthew McCusker, Maria's Deputy. Thank you, Peter, thank you, Pat, thank you, Frances, and thank you, Phil. And congratulations once again on your 50th anniversary. As I say, through their good offices, you have been supporting with your donations and prayers the language of universal reproductive health and reproductive rights, and the language of universal sex education, access to health services for over 2 decades. Reproductive rights and services is the term defined by the IPPF and by the British government and governments all over the world as including the right to abortion and contraception, unrestricted by the values of the doctor, the nurse, the teacher, and above all, unrestricted by parents. Note carefully that international powers are not only opposing parents as the primary educators, they are seeking to manipulate young people so that young people see themselves as educators of their parents. In 2011, at the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN in New York, International Planned Parenthood Federation, the Population Council, and other pro-abortion groups held a meeting to launch worldwide a massive program of so-called comprehensive sex education entitled It's All One Curriculum. This curriculum shows itself to be nakedly polemical rather than educational. It states in its guidance for teachers, the guidance in dealing with young people can support or join movements for social change at the global level. For example, youth-led networks for sexual and reproductive rights and services. Now, on my instructions through these past 20 years or so, Peter and Pat have fought the language of universal access to reproductive health in close association with the Holy See. The Catholic Church's presence at the United Nations, as Peter Smith, an evangelical Christian, will tell you, has been the most important defence for unborn children worldwide during that period. In spite of all the power of Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, the European Union and the International Planned Parenthood Federation, and literally hundreds of other pro-abortion bodies, including governments, the pro-abortion lobby has not succeeded in their objective of securing an international agreement supporting the right to abortion. And arguably, that's been the pro-life movement and SPUC's most important achievement. However, our opponents have done untold damage, costing countless millions of lives by their promotion of universal access to reproductive health and services, ambiguous language which, as you know, is interpreted as legalising abortion on demand throughout the world. As a Catholic myself, I want to make an appeal now to my fellow Catholics to say the Rosary daily for Catholic leaders, and especially for Pope Francis. Pope Francis has said that he is gratified by UN goals that call on member states to ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health by 2030. Now, the term, as we know, includes contraception, abortifacient methods, and other forms of abortion. In a message entitled "For the Celebration of the World Day of Prayer and for the Care of Creation," Pope Francis stated that he was, quote, gratified that in September 2015 the nations of the world adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, and that in December 2015 they approved the Paris Agreement on climate change. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, agreed by nation states in September 2015, consists of 17 goals and 169 targets, which will determine the direction of international aid and action until 2030. These goals were endorsed by the Paris Agreement on climate change. The Sustainable Development Goals call on member states to, quote, ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health care services, including for family planning, information and education, and the integration of reproductive health into national strategies and programs. Remember, universal access to these things means parents mustn't get in the way. That's what it means. Because you can't have universal access if parents have a right to object. That's how it's all defined. So in addition, the Vatican has recently published a sex education program to be used in educational institutions, which completely sidelines parents, following Pope Francis's call for sex education in his apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia. The Vatican program is appalling and plays straight into the hands of the pro-abortion lobby, who are using such programs worldwide to introduce our children and grandchildren to the culture of death and to entrench abortion on demand for another generation. Now, if you want to know more about all of this, contact Pat and Peter and members of our international team managed by Maria and Matthew. But above all, I make my appeal to my fellow Catholics: please say the daily rosary for our church leaders and for our families and for our children. Because what is happening risks undermining the hard work of the pro-life movement these past 50 years. I want to conclude by referring to SPUC's educational outreach in schools, now being led by Dr. Tom Rogers and Dr. Anthony McCarthy, through which thousands of young people hear a professional, up-to-date, carefully researched, audio-visual live presentation on abortion from SPUC's trained volunteers throughout Britain. Our work in Scotland in this matter, of course, is led by BiSPUC Scotland and its outstanding Chief Executive, John Deegan. They're working in close collaboration with us with our educational programme. But I can't conclude my conclusion without referring to Eileen Bryden, who has led this work for us. For going on for a quarter of a century, in rain, hail or shine, at times when the question of SPUC's educational outreach to schools has been rather swamped by our other activities. Eileen has been a beacon of faith in SPUC's evidence-based educational outreach to schools, and she's been primarily responsible for keeping this vital work going when its presence in the Society's work might have been wrongly overwhelmed by other priorities. More importantly, Eileen has been a beacon of faith in young people, in the supreme importance of forming young people in the culture of life, both for their own sake and for the sake of safeguarding the culture society generally, the culture of life in society generally in Britain. More than that, Eileen has not just gone the extra mile, she's run a marathon of extra miles, working way beyond her planned retirement date. Why? In order to keep faith with the young people SPUC serves. SPUC had not gone about finding a replacement for Eileen, and I was very much to blame for that, and I apologise to you and to Eileen. But Eileen, you filled the breach. Thank you for that. What you've done is to leave us all with the finest of examples of steadfast loyalty to unborn children. That's what motivates you. I'm proud to have worked with you for perhaps 3 decades or more. Whilst you're sorely missed, you're still there, I know, not so much in the background. You've left an amazing legacy, a thriving department, a formidable example of total loyalty to the cause for which you've given your life to support. Eileen, could you come and... Eileen said it was 40, not 30 years. That's your lot. Thank you.